TV. Hey everybody, CatSynth TV, and today we are exploring Harmonia, a new original instrument from our friends at Cherry Audio. This is part one of a two-part series. In this video, we'll dive into the details of Harmonia's unique harmonic scanning oscillator and check out a few of the factory presets. But before we begin, please consider supporting this channel so that we may bring you more synthesizer and other cultural content regularly. Links to our merch, Patreon, and Ko-Fi are in the description below. Harmonia presents this beautiful and deceptively simple interface, with all of its features on the main panel. The heart of the instrument are its two oscillators, each of which has a graphical representation of the harmonics, along with associated controls for shaping them. They're also the filter, the effects section, two envelopes, 4 LFOs, a modulation matrix, and, of course, the keyboard. Let's listen to a few of the factory presets now. Okay, let's initialize things and start our deep dive into Harmonia's oscillators, which Cherry Audio calls the Multi-Harmonic Interpolated Scanning Oscillators. Now, if you're wondering what the that means, don't worry, we'll break it down for you. Each oscillator uses a waveform selected from Harmonia's internal waveform library. The waveform then powers each of the oscillator's 8 harmonics, which interpolate and play the waveform at frequencies that are multiples of the main pitch. These numbers represent those frequency multiples, which are right now a simple harmonic series going in order. You can raise or lower the amplitude of the harmonics manually in the main display like this. Or you can sweep them by setting an initial level and moving the center control. Those changing skinny red lines represent how much of each partial you will hear. Okay, now that we have a sense of how this thing works, let's strip it down to its most basic. Go to the waveform library and select the humble sine wave. With sine waves as our harmonics, we can do traditional additive synthesis, where complex sounds are built up by adding together simple sine waves. Bring up the first harmonic. Add in some more. We now have a relatively rich sound. Adjust the higher harmonics to change the timbre a bit. Now there is an alternate way to use the harmonics in Harmonia. Bring all the levels back to 0. We can instead raise the initial level. and sweep the center to dynamically change the amplitude of the harmonics. Think of the initial level as a certain amount of energy available for the harmonics. Most of it will be given to the harmonics set by the center control, and a bit distributed to the adjacent ones. We can use the width control to spread out this energy to more harmonics around the center. Now we can modulate the center value. It has a dedicated modulation path. Select a source, like LFO1, and increase the modulation level. Now, when using an LFO with the center control, it helps to shift its bias all the way to the right. Okay, let's try it out. Increase the modulation amount. Lower the frequency. Adjust the width. Cool! This sort of dynamic modulation of harmonics is central to the sound of Harmonia. Turn off the modulation for the moment. Now, so far we have been using the basic harmonic series, where the frequencies of harmonics are consecutive integer multiples of the fundamental pitch. We can change the harmonics to be different multiples. Still always integer multiples of the fundamental, but not necessarily consecutive, or even in increasing order. Let's bring the levels back up and hear what we have. A different, more complex sound than the basic harmonic series. Tuning the harmonics this way can be a bit challenging. Fortunately, Harmonia provides several harmonic presets, which are predefined arrangements of harmonic frequency ratios. For example, odd order sets each harmonic at odd multiples of the fundamental. If we arrange the amplitudes like this, we get something that sounds a bit like a square wave from an analog synthesizer. Now we can use the center control and the static harmonic levels together to create a dynamic timbre. Another interesting preset is tone wheel drawbars, which set the harmonics to feet on an electric organ. Not surprisingly, this will give us an organ-like timbre. We can again combine the static drawbar levels with the dynamic center control. Bring back in modulation. Cool. And let's try one more preset. Triplin uses the first, third, and then every sixth harmonic above those. This yields a still more complex timbre with higher frequency ratios among the harmonics. You can even randomize the frequency settings. Okay, reset again. Now with Harmonia, we are not limited to sine waves. As in traditional additive synthesis, we can select from a wide variety of other waveforms in the included library. Let's try this one called Spectral Sync. You can hear quite a bit of timbral richness in the waveform, so let's try using it with multiple harmonics. Sweep the center. Adjust these a bit. Now I'm going to add some modulation to the center, this time with aftertouch, otherwise known as channel pressure. I can probably make the modulation a little smoother by increasing the width. So now you see how you can use different waveforms and harmonic modulation to quickly make some very expressive sounds. Let's try a few more of these. An interesting one is Ondas 1, which is from an early electronic instrument, the Ondas Martineau. Pardon my French. An interesting haunting sound. The little bit of noise gives it a lo-fi touch. We can use something with a bit more of a percussive attack, like one of these piano waveforms. Ooh, that sounds tense and spooky. Great for a horror film. There are also some interesting noise sources that you can use for the harmonics. Let's try this vinyl record crackle. Sweep the frequency. Bring up some of the higher harmonics. Okay, reset again. And this time, I'm going to select one of the pulse waveforms. Now, so far, we have been dealing with harmonics from the harmonic series. That is, integer multiples of the fundamental frequency. Harmonia also provides the ability to set the harmonics to musical scales using Semitone Mode. In this mode, each harmonic is a certain number of semitones above the fundamental pitch. If we take the width down all the way, we can play a chromatic scale. There's a collection of semitone presets with various scales and modes. For example, we have the conventional major scale. We can bring up the static levels on various partials. Let's try it again with a different preset. I'm going to select Locrian mode because I do things like that. Might be better with a softer waveform, like a triangle. You can get some interesting harmonies. This one is much prettier than I expected. But one of the main uses of semitone mode is center sweep. Take the width all the way down again. Now if we modulate this with an LFO, like LFO 1, bias up, rate down, we can move through the scale. We can change the LFO wave to sample and hold. Let's set it to tempo sync. We have a kind of pseudo sequencer going. Add a little bit of width. Now we can set the LFO to poly mode, which allows us to play different copies of the LFO that start with each key. Now we can have sort of counterpoint when we play multiple notes at once. Let's do one more example. Select the minor blues scale. This is a personal favorite, of course. And select another waveform. How about this Juno organ sound? Set the LFO back to triangle to go up and down the scale. So now you should have a good idea of how Harmonia's oscillator works and its many possibilities for interesting and complex sounds. In part 2, we'll look at using both oscillators together, as well as the filter, effects, and a few more of the factory presets. So please come back and check that out too. To learn more about Harmonia and trying it out yourself, please visit cherryaudio.com and check out the description below this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to CatSynth TV.